Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Real-World Business Continuity Insights, Considerations, and Recommendations from the Office of the CTO here at Citrix. My name is Eric Henney, and I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager for Citrix Workspace, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Before I introduce our panel members, I just want to take a moment to set the stage for this webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about business disruptions and the ways you can plan to effectively minimize those disruptions and come out on the other side as a stronger organization. So if you look at Citrix's 30-year history, we've helped our customers deal with everything from weather phenomena like hurricanes and blizzards, power outages, and geopolitical events that have all disrupted the normal course of business. I think we'd all agree that we're in a bit of an unprecedented time at the moment. So we want to share every bit of knowledge that we've gathered over those 30 years so we can help our customers not only survive this, but thrive. And it's not only for what we're experiencing now, but it's to help you be prepared for whatever the next unexpected event is. Our Office of the CTO is a pretty phenomenal group to do a knowledge share. Collectively, they got over a century of technology experience. They've worked in all sorts of different industries and are in countries or have worked in countries all over the globe. They're always a very busy group, but I would say that these past few weeks have been especially busy for them as they've all kind of rolled up their sleeves to help our customers with their business continuity plans. So I'll let each of the panel members introduce themselves and say a few words to help set the scene for our discussion today. So Safi, let's start with you.
Thanks, Eric. So my name's Safi Obadilla. I'm the field CTO for Asia Pacific and Japan, and actually this month is my 10th year with Citrix, and it's been quite a journey. I have to say that being in Asia Pacific, it's been interesting to see this pandemic situation grow, and we've been working through it since about December, January. It's been really interesting. I mean, people are already calling it the world's biggest working from home experiment, and working from home or remote working hasn't really been something that all organizations supported. It was something that was perhaps there for a subset of the organizations or the executives. But in a scenario that we are today where it's forced upon everyone, it's really interesting to see how organizations are responding. And I do believe that we're going to see a fundamental shift in the definition of work. And for many organizations, as we come out of this, they're probably going to continue to adopt and maintain a remote working policy because they've seen how well it can work.
Excellent. Thanks for that introduction. Next, Victor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Victor Rodriguez. I'm the field CTO for the Americas. I live in Miami, Florida. I've been with Citrix now for a little over a year and a half. Actually, right at a year and a half. I was the CTO for Health Choice Network, which is a large health center control network here in South Florida. As Safi was saying, healthcare, with the pandemic going on, this is one of the critical verticals that's going to require us to focus on business continuity. We're experiencing a great eye-opener right now with what's going on in the world, and it's forcing us to be prepared for anything. So in South Florida, specifically within healthcare, we know the importance of being prepared for natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, things like that. So today we're going to delve a little bit on what those experiences in healthcare have provided as useful information and knowledge to what we're seeing today.
Excellent. Thank you. And next up, Kurt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kurt Romer, Chief Security Strategist. I've been with Citrix for about 14 years now, and I've worked with Citrix technology since the early 90s. I'm currently working from a secret bunker in the U.S. Midwest and displaced like many. We have some new implications to personal and enterprise security to discuss today and want to help everybody achieve some better security outcomes and thrive even with these major disruptions. You look at COVID-19, it's like it flicked the switch and moved the bulk of the enterprise workforce to a largely remote and home-based workforce. That has some major security implications. In fact, if you think about it, the physical, network, and social protections of the office have been substituted with a security experience that most of us are still coming to grips with. So today we'll discuss how to optimize and deal with the current situation, as well as how to continuously evolve our abilities to protect security, privacy, and compliance across ever-changing work situations and this new normal of disruption.
Thank you, Kurt. And finally, last but certainly not least, Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jeff Sanderson. I'm the Senior Technology Strategist and Field CTO of Networking here at Citrix. I'm actually based in Seattle. I've been at Citrix just around 8 years, moving to Seattle about a year ago from the European theater, where I formerly held the role of Field CTO in Europe. As regards to today's discussion, what I'm going to be talking about is really the impacts that we're seeing in the realm of enterprise data networking, and specifically has been referenced already, the mass shift to working from home. And really, it's more than just about deploying VPN clients and VPN servers. And, setting aside the security question, which I'm sure Kurt's going to cover, I'm going to talk about many of the other factors that will kind of determine just how usable these solutions are. So I'll be covering some of those later on.
Excellent. Well, thanks to all of you for those introductions. So we'll move right into the discussion. And Safi, I'd really like to start with you and pick up on one of the remarks that you made as you were introducing yourself. You were talking about how this current situation has really created the world's biggest work from home experiment. It's really hard to argue against that given where we are today. But from your perspective and what you're seeing, one, are businesses ready for this? And two, what are the challenges that they're going to be facing as they move into this new normal?
Thanks, Eric. Look, I think right now businesses don't really have a choice. The situation that many of us are in today means that we have to make it work. I think when you look at most businesses, though, a lot of businesses are prepared. They have a disaster recovery plan, and that plan typically focuses on the data center. But in the situation we're in at the moment, there's no point in having all of your IT functions up and running if people can't get to them. So organizations are having to learn very fast. I think the good thing is, though, the challenge isn't so much the lack of technologies. There's plenty of technologies available, whether it's collaboration tools like Teams or Zoom, conferencing platforms like that, virtual desktop technologies, VPN technologies, high-speed internet. So we have all the core technologies. It's how organizations can come together to quickly bring those different technologies together and enable people to be productive from home. I think this experiment, as we're calling it, will certainly help organizations learn what they need to do to enable employees to be productive from anywhere. I guess it was something that people were already thinking about, but with the current situation, that's been fast-tracked. I think when we come out of this, though, it may not suit. Organizations may find that it may not be something that suits every role. For a doctor or a bank teller or a factory worker, they may actually need to be in the office. But I think coming out of this, for many people, they'll actually find they can work effectively and be as productive when they're working from home. I think the interesting thing I'm seeing, though, is how quickly people are responding. Businesses are having this situation forced upon them, and particularly in Asia Pacific and Japan, where I'm directly involved working with a number of customers and partners and organizations. It's been amazing to see how the types of innovative solutions people are coming up with, and in such a short time frame as well.
Do you have an example that you could share of that type of innovation?
Yeah, sure. There's one company that we work quite closely with, which was actually the University of Sydney. They're based here in Australia, and Australia actually has a large contingent of overseas students, particularly from China. So the University of Sydney actually had 14,000 students that were stuck in China and unable to commence their first year of study. And so the new semester was about to commence at the end of February, and they reached out to us probably 3 weeks prior to that to say, hey, we need to work out a solution to enable these students to actually commence their studies and start working. Now, because of the university already had certain workloads and instances established in AWS, where we were able to actually establish a gateway in the AWS region in Hong Kong, and from there students were able to securely access their web and SaaS-based applications, all the online learning applications that the university was using, and they were then able to leverage the backplane in the AWS cloud. And the backplane for these clouds, whether it's AWS or Azure, typically provides a much faster path to connect back to workloads in their home region or in their data center as well. And then from there, I guess the time we had the first meeting to the time we went live was less than 10 days. So it was a pretty amazing effort on behalf of the Citrix people involved, as well as the university staff as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing that all that happened in such a short time frame. And I know from, I think, all of our collective experience, we know that typically when you work with an organization of that size, there's a lot of red tape to cut, and there's some, there may be some bureaucracy to deal with as you're rolling out these types of programs. Obviously, that gets cut pretty quickly over the course of 10 days. What are some of the risks that you've seen associated with data, with moving quickly?
I think the challenge with moving quickly is sometimes, I don't want to say cut corners, but you move fast to achieve the outcome, and you, I guess, reflect back and say, I'll deal with that, some of those things later. And sometimes what we're seeing is security is being put to the side a little in some areas to quickly ramp up people's ability to actually get working. But I think there's things that need to be considered, and I'm pretty sure Kurt would have some interesting perspectives on this.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, the urgent response to this disruption has resulted in some really shocking security relaxations that were unfathomable even a few short weeks ago. People are taking their corporate desktops home. Enterprise VPNs are on home computers. Sensitive enterprise data is being displayed and discussed in the home. Even at early stages of disruption, organizations and individuals quickly saw that their position in Maslow's hierarchy of needs dropped to the most basic of levels, which from an information technology perspective are the 3 C's: connectivity, communication, and continuity of operations. We're going to talk about those.
Yeah, and it's funny, I think we've all consumed a fair amount of news over the past few weeks. But one trend that I've seen in publications, in different couple of different publications, we're all kind of covering the same topic, which is we all thought the VPN was dead, but it has been resurrected, due to coronavirus. Have you seen this as well? And maybe you could touch on the pros and cons of that strategy.
Yeah, VPN's a very big topic these days. Over the past couple months, VPNs have proven to be one of the quick ways for organizations to provide for unplanned remote connectivity. But now that everybody's online, it's time to revisit the security of remote working and seek to mitigate threats to sensitive data, reduce the attack surface. And this is especially true for any connectivity solution that was hastily rolled out using just passwords. And if that happened with your VPN, it is absolutely essential that modern authentication, including multi-factor auth, otherwise known as MFA, is enabled immediately to reduce the risks of account takeover. Once you get beyond that, it's very important to go back and ask about the need to keep sensitive data off of remote endpoints and focus on how to protect individual cloud and browser-based apps as more application usage is moving to the browser. And these are 2 major security concerns that VPNs were never designed to address. It's time to focus less on access and more on appropriate usage.
And Kurt, now with everyone working remotely, we've got a new set of risks, and for the organization and for employees. What are some of the more unique risks that you're seeing for protecting sensitive communication while people are working from home?
Yeah, to ramp up security for employee communications, we really need to consider how communications have changed during the shift to working from home, and how you validate the legitimacy of these communications when you no longer have a physical presence. Many people are very used to their office experience and how they communicate, and this is completely different. And the concerns here range from amplified phishing attacks, the ability to verify the identity of somebody on the other end of the line, and even giving away the physical location of a remote employee through their GPS coordinates or a personal phone number being automatically displayed in the communications app. It's really especially important to consider that employees will also be bouncing back and forth between work and home environments, checking news, checking on loved ones, and checking social media, which is putting their browsers and their communications apps at a greater risk of compromise. Any link that comes in could be a problem, of course, right? Realizing that this is happening, enterprises must build protections into the employee workspace to protect their confidentiality, integrity, availability, and safety, and ensure that critical communications can happen from any location, app, and work situation securely. And as an employee, make sure that you're turning off anything that has a microphone and webcam, including things like TV remotes that you might not even think about, to make sure that they're not eavesdropping on very sensitive communications.
Yeah, and I think anyone that is focused on security would recognize that a lot of the things that you're talking about are directly related to zero trust and a zero trust framework. And I think from the work from home side, as Dafi was talking about, we're probably going to see a sea change, and working remotely will become the new normal. I have to imagine that this will also put a lot of wind in the sails of initiatives like zero trust as a kind of an unintended side effect of what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Eric. This is a great time to talk about zero trust. We've finally hit the new epoch where we can go through and completely redo everything. Now that many organizations and individuals have achieved a very basic level of continuity of operations, it's time to move up to the next level on Maslow's pyramid and enable safety. Embracing zero trust is really about embracing a zero trust framework that assumes that there's absolutely no inherent enterprise trust and verifies trusts at all levels. Building the zero trust fabric into the workspace removes the burden of today's individual trust decisions from already overburdened employees who are working under unfamiliar circumstances. In other words, don't remember what the policy manual says as you're clicking on everything, and you're going to get in trouble. For example, how many times has IT told employees at the most basic level not to click on links in email or social media? We all know what really happens here, right? And this results in phishing, ransomware, and other exposures. And how much worse do you think these attacks will devolve in the new 2020? Well, with that quick example, instead of leaving critical security decisions to chance, why not utilize the principles of zero trust to organize, guide, and automate security for the workspace? Have policies that control each work situation and scrutinize the context of each request using what I call the 5 W's of context, which are who, what, when, where, and why. And have these 5 W's of context carefully evaluate the legitimacy of the intended action and dynamically engage security measures, which can even include things like one-time use browser sessions when somebody clicks on a link, so that sure they've clicked on the link, it opens up a browser, but not one on their computer, not one that's connected to the enterprise network, not one that can infect others. Embracing zero trust really ensures that every action that's performed in the workspace is continuously situationally aware and contextually risk appropriate. In other words, we protect employees by protecting the workspace.
Thanks, Kurt. And that actually has me thinking, now that there's no one in the office and the corporate WAN has essentially fallen silent, what does this mean for business data networks? I'm sure that the problems are shifting elsewhere, right?
This is Jeff. I can probably take that one. So you're right. I mean, when all your workers are accessing remotely, assuming you've enabled the means to do that, then clearly that's going to put a lot of stress on the available business internet capacity. For a lot of businesses, the usual state has the majority of their enterprise data traffic and what I classify as on network. So, effectively, much of that traffic is rolling over the WAN networks that connect the remote offices to data centers and so forth. And even those customers that have moved towards the cloud usually start that journey with interconnecting their data centers to public clouds with dedicated links. So today, in the main, only a small percentage, albeit it's a growing percentage, certainly over the last few years, of the overall traffic comes into the data center today over VPN, to support the needs of remote working. And consequently, enterprise data networks are designed with this in mind. So especially in regard to available internet capacity. These internet links are primarily sized to allow the user community that's on network, so working for office locations and so forth, access the broader internet and these off-net internet resources, including the likes of SaaS. So the capacity of that internet link mostly accommodates the egress traffic leaving the enterprise and going out to the internet. And only a small slice of that capacity enables remote workers access back into the corporate network. So for those companies where the percentage of traffic is still mostly on network, the internet capacity is likely to be proportionately less. So now you have a scenario where everyone is on the outside trying to come back in and do their normal work, as Safi mentioned earlier. For a vast majority of these companies, this means that their actual internet capacity just won't be sufficient. So you're trying effectively to squeeze what was once your entire WAN capacity into this constrained internet pipe. So even if you can roll out an expanded VPN service in world record time, there's still a good chance that the user performance is going to be pretty poor, and in a lot of cases just downright unusable. Of course, things like adopting split tunneling within the VPN setup may ease that. So some of the traffic rolling in over the VPN is only that applicable business application data. And I'm kind of making the assumption that, a lot of the VPNs that are being put in place today are going to assume split tunneling anyway. So, and I think finally, let's not forget about the fact that, in reality, these home-based networks where everyone's now working from aren't really designed to support enterprise usage, especially like in my situation here today. You've got other people in the home continually streaming YouTube, Netflix, or other kind of online content that eats away the bandwidth that you've got available.
I know that is something that I am dealing with myself. So we're a few weeks into this now from this largest work from home experiment ever. Do we have any evidence or data over that we gathered over the last few weeks that would suggest that Citrix customers are coming to grips with this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've already heard from a large number of our customers that kind of validate the challenges that I've already mentioned. So, and to be fair, lots of them are scrambling, some successful, unfortunately the vast majority not so, to upgrade their raw internet capacity to handle this temporary increased volume of traffic that these remote workers are generating. The trouble is, it often takes a long time to provision with a service provider to uplift your bandwidth, and in some cases it just simply can't be upgraded without a massive significant effort, depending on the types of technology that's feeding your location. From a traditional, let me talk about virtual desktops, right? Because from a traditional virtual desktop service, even those customers that we have that could expand the capacity, their license capacity, for example, in their on-premises data center locations, we're actually, an interesting point here is that we actually see some of those customers moving more towards our cloud-based managed desktop service. And the reason for that is, even if they can increase their licenses on-prem, if they've got this kind of pinch on the bandwidth getting users into the on-prem facility where those virtual desktops are being hosted, then you've still got this kind of performance usability challenge. So like I said, the reason being, if you've got a crunch on the internet capacity, you're going to consequently, even though you can give that remote user some level of service, it's probably not a service that they're going to get a great experience out of. So clearly, if you're taking our managed desktop service as an example, then rather than that traffic being fed into the on-prem data center, for example, it's going straight into the cloud. So it's not impacting this limited crunch on internet capacity at the corporate locations. I think perhaps what's more telling is, when I look at the growth of our gateway service, which is really the anchor point into the into the cloud-hosted remote desktop environment, we've seen a massive stepped increase in the active users across the globe, clearly in the last few weeks. And these are users that are accessing our cloud-based workspace services remotely. Whether the resource locations are customer managed on-prem or in the cloud, or indeed part of our newer managed desktop service. And I think at this point, it's probably also worth noting that, using a virtual desktop is pretty bandwidth efficient, especially for users, and this may be the majority of users, just using it for the most basic of their needs, so mail and productivity apps like Office and so forth. The average consumption for a virtual desktop session is around about 150 kilobits per second, which is not a lot actually. And that can represent a significant reduction in the bandwidth requirements compared to, say, a conventional VPN client accessing corporate resources. I mean, just think about it, pulling down mail attachments and the likes, which you obviously don't have to do if you're doing that all via a remote desktop service. Now, finally, for those critical services that need to expand really, really quickly and securely into, specifically into new temporary locations, what we're seeing is obviously SD-WAN is really coming to the front, and it's able to demonstrate one of its biggest advantages over traditional WAN provisioning hurdles. And by that, I mean the speed and flexibility of service enablement. And quite frankly, this is really crucially important for supporting, critical facility expansions or pop-up treatment centers in the healthcare space, which is, of course, under a lot of extreme pressure right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. I'm glad you mentioned that because, focusing on the healthcare space is something that I wanted to do in this conversation, given it's one of the largest sectors that we serve. As you mentioned, there are really intense pressures on healthcare providers around the globe right now. So I'd love to get Victor's perspective on what he's seeing in response to this. Victor, what are you seeing and how well equipped do you think our healthcare customers are right now?
Year after year before the start of hurricane season, we'd go over our disaster recovery plan. Meeting invites would go out, everyone would have the same cheery attitude of, here we go again. No one wanted to be in those meetings. It was the same conversation over and over again for many years until the 2004 hurricane season, when 5 hurricanes hit South Florida. Actually hit the entire state of Florida within a 3-month period. And we hadn't seen a major hurricane since Hurricane Andrew in '92. So we had no idea what to do. We had a disaster recovery plan in place, but it was new. It wasn't something that we've been adept to dealing with on a continuous basis. The next year we had 3 more hurricanes hit, and time again we kept getting hit with hurricanes over and over again. And we go back and say, what did we miss? We documented, we learned from it, we created a hurricane task force all over the state. We changed the way that we looked at hurricanes as they were coming down. Held town halls, invited everyone from the industry, shared information among the community to say, hey guys, this is what we're doing, this is what we saw, this is what we heard. So because of that experience, I strongly believe that the industry is more prepared to deal with this than probably any other industry. And not just because it's a virus, it's a health pandemic. It's more because we understand what it is to have a clinic underwater with no electricity or connectivity and seeing patients outside of a mobile trailer using hotspots. Being able to have that mobility of standing up, being able to recover and see patients as quickly as possible. And that goes not just for hurricanes, but, like September 11th, we never heard on the news that, we can't take care of the engine. We're not going to be able to do it. It was always a positive attitude in healthcare. They were prepared to deal with the worst. So I think for the most part, they're very well prepared in what we're going to be seeing. I can't speak too much as about what the equipment is going to be with the masks and the respirators, but the industry is prepared. And we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we're able to see patients. And clinicians are not the only ones working hard. We have non-clinical folks that are also going through this. Administrations, procurement, IT, the help desk, all these individuals during the middle of hurricanes, they are in a role where they're supporting people that could possibly be outside of the danger area where they're at. So in Florida, for example, we had customers out in California, and in the middle of Hurricane Irma in 2017, we were getting calls from the clinics in California. They just wanted to see if somebody would pick up the phone because they knew that we were in the middle of the storm. So we have that working from home mindset from the very beginning, from back in the 2000s when we were getting hit with hurricane over hurricane. We had users driving upstate trying to get out of South Florida and still being able to remotely in and do their jobs and take IT phone calls. And this is not completely new to healthcare. Healthcare providers are among the most common employers offering jobs from home. We see it every day. With the enactment of the HIPAA Act in 1996, healthcare was forced to take a look at how technology was being utilized and how it would need to get better for the patient privacy and safety. Remote desktop was the key to addressing HIPAA. Like Kurt mentioned, not having those users take their devices home and have patient data on the devices was critical. So the only way we were going to be able to do it was with remote desktop. They've been working like this for the last 30 years. Working from home is just one more location to them, whether it's at the clinic today, at the hospital, at home, at a patient's house. It's what they do every day. For me, in my personal experience, I was working from home about 4 to 5 times a month. It was part of the way that we worked. It was something that if you had a big project going on and needed to work on the server, you went home and did it. It was just the way that we worked.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight, Victor. I think that's something that is top of mind for most people right now, so we really appreciate you sharing that. So I think we're just about out of time, so I want to thank everyone on the panel for joining today and for sharing this information with our attendees. I also want to thank everyone that was able to join the webinar today. We know this is a difficult time and that you're doing everything in your power from the technology side to keep things as close to normal as possible for your organization. So we at Citrix just want to say thank you and let you know that all of your work is appreciated, and if there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon.